What's going on, everyone? I'm the Intel, and today I'm going to be ranking every single Mass Effect game on a tier list. I've personally been playing Mass Effect all the way since around, I think about 2011, and Mass Effect 2 is one of my favorite games of all time. It's simply perfect. I've played through it maybe 6, maybe 7 full times, all the DLC. I love the game. It's just so good. But anyway, today we're going to be ranking all the way from Mass Effect 1 to Andromeda. Let's jump right on in. Mass Effect 1 was the first of the 4 mainline Mass Effect titles. I can't lie, when I first tried the original Mass Effect, after I finished Mass Effect 2, I know, not the best way to play it, but that's how I did it. I wasn't the biggest on Mass Effect 1. It really didn't grab me in any way. I think Mass Effect 1, if you play it for the very first time today, it's gonna feel dated, and it might put you off playing, but don't let that stop you. It really is worth it. Mass Effect 1's story is amazing. It's got that amazing conspiracy element, and it's got a wide open galaxy and discovering the races and people that inhabit it. It's got downright planet exploration that would never be seen in any other Mass Effect game. I love Mass Effect 1. I think it's got such a rich and incredibly well made story that everyone needs to give a try. Combat and gameplay wise though is where things begin to feel very, very dated. It's clunky, slow, and the overheating mechanic is just not good. But thankfully, we have the Mass Effect Legendary Edition, which does tons of tweaks and improvements to make the combat and gameplay into a much better experience. But of all the titles, it's obviously my least favourite combat. Finally, the graphics as part of the Legendary Edition look great, to be honest. But if you go back to the original 2007 graphics, well, they look quite dated. But, of course, there's one thing I forgot to mention, and that is the iconic soundtrack. Overall, Mass Effect 1 is an unbelievably strong title for its age, but due to its weak combat and gameplay, and I didn't even mention the Mako, I think it belongs in the A tier. Now, as you might be able to tell because of the intro, I love Mass Effect 2. I think it's one of the best games ever made, and it's not even a competition in my books. The story of Mass Effect 2, even after about 6 or 7 playthroughs, it still grabs me, and I still love it every single time I play through it. It's simply fantastic. The Collectors are an incredibly menacing threat throughout the whole game. You feel how powerful and strong the Collectors are and how weak humanity is in comparison to the Collectors. I could go on and on about how much I love Mass Effect 2's story, but we're just going to move on to gameplay because we would be here all day. Mass Effect 2 I think is a great blend of RPG and action that creates a much better combat experience across the board compared to Mass Effect 1. But I do believe that the skill trees in Mass Effect 2 are toned down a bit too much. There's little to no reason to upgrade your skills other than you want more damage. I think Mass Effect 1, 3 and Andromeda did this much better. Graphically, Mass Effect 2 still looks good. It saw some small graphical changes in the Legendary Edition, but in all honesty, the game could use a fresh coat of paint in a similar way to Mass Effect 1 Legendary Edition, but I'd still say the graphics look solid and still hold up to this day. Musically, this is absolutely one of the best soundtracks for any game. Overall, you already know where I'm going to put this game. Obviously, I'm putting it in the S tier. The third and final of the original trilogy is easily the most controversial of the original trilogy. Mass Effect 3 was almost a fantastic title in my opinion. It's got the strongest combat of the original trilogy and a much better leveling system than Mass Effect 2, allowing for more variety in how you level your character. I also think Mass Effect 3 in terms of story, up until a specific point, is really good, going all the way to the Asari homeworld of Thessia, and also heading up to the Turian moon of Palaven, and then to Earth. There's tons of variety in level design in Mass Effect 3, which I don't think anywhere else in the series has been replicated. But enough about what was done great, let's discuss what drags Mass Effect 3 down. Firstly, let's just get out of the way, and that's of course parts of the story, in particular the ending, are just not done very well. The child and the dream sequences, I feel these parts are my least favourite. I just feel them to be a bore and not to add very much to the overall story. Another downfall of Mass Effect 3 is the lack of squad mates. There's only 7 squad mates, which is not okay in my opinion, since it's the only Mass Effect that doesn't have a Krogan squad mate. Which sucks, because personally Rex and Grunt are 2 of the best characters in the series in my opinion. And finally, it's how Cerberus was handled in 3. In Mass Effect 1 and 2, they were kind of a grey zone, not a clear good or a clear bad guy team. You could work with them or against them in Mass Effect 2, but in 3 they are only villains, and that's my biggest problem with 3. Cerberus just turned from this grey zone. You could kind of work with them, you could kind of side with them, or you could not, but in Mass Effect 3 they just turned into pure bad villains, and that's my main issue with the story. Overall though, I do love Mass Effect 3. It's an incredible game, but when you compare it to the other 2 games in the original trilogy, I do think it's slightly behind the rest, making this our very first B tier. Now, Mass Effect's probably most controversial title is Mass Effect Andromeda. Andromeda was meant to be the kickoff of a new trilogy, yet it was the title that put Mass Effect into early retirement. Andromeda may be hailed as one of the worst games out there, but I don't entirely agree. The core combat of Andromeda is easily my favourite of the trilogy. It's fast, fluid and fun, and it's got some of the best abilities for combat. But the gameplay isn't all perfect. The new skill system, which allows you to spec into any specialization, meaning you could be a biotic, soldier and technician at the exact same time, is a major negative, because it basically means there's no point to replay the game as a biotic or a soldier, because you can do it all in one playthrough. Also, Andromeda's story is easily by far the worst in the series, with some really poor writing and honestly a story I barely remember. Andromeda is easily the worst and most flawed of the series, but there's a good reason for that. Basically, in short, Andromeda was meant to be much more ambitious, but those ideas never really worked out. If you want more detail on Andromeda's development and why it turned out the way it did, check out Matt McMuscle's video titled Mass Effect Andromeda: What Happened. It's got all the information on why Andromeda turned out like it did. I'll leave a link in the description below. It really helped me kind of see Andromeda in a new light, seeing how the game was meant to turn out, and its original ideas. There's one thing I forgot to mention that they removed, and that is the removal of Paragon and Renegade. It's something I don't know why they removed at all. It's kind of a staple of the franchise, but it was removed and it made the game much worse in my opinion. Another thing I also forgot to mention is the soundtrack. I actually think the soundtrack for Andromeda is not that bad. In my opinion, it's not as great as the originals, but I actually like some of the tracks. Overall, even without mentioning the countless bugs and glitches, Andromeda is easily the worst in the series, but with some of the best combat in the series, I don't think it belongs in like an F tier or anything that low. I think it does fall into the D tier. It's got decent combat and it's the only reason it lands there. Everything else just feels mediocre, and when comparing it to the original trilogy, is by nowhere close to being up to Mass Effect standards. And that's the list. If you've got your own lists and rankings, feel free to leave them below. Mass Effect is one of the greatest RPG series ever created, and I cannot wait for the next entry, which was confirmed in December of 2020. And it looks great, but it's probably still many years away, as BioWare still have to make another Dragon Age game, so we're probably going to be waiting a very long time for that. But anyway, thank you for watching, I've been The Intel, and have a lovely day.